Gracie and I are at the coal mines today, and we're visiting something a little bit different for us. There's plenty of broken bricks, but on this video here we're looking at a pair of mine shafts. Just standing in front of one just down there now, and there's one a couple of metres away over there, which we'll get to in a minute. This location here was mined by both convicts and then later on private firms that leased the coal mines from the government. So it gives us a bit of an interesting look at how things were slightly different for each of those parties working the shafts down here. So let's have a look at this beautiful platform. It's 12 metres wide and about 10 metres from the bank there to where the shafts are. It's covered in deadfall at the moment, looks like some type of logging camp, but back in the old days all this would have been cleared and nice and flat. You can see how much soil they would have had to dig away from here. At the highest point here, the bank's a couple of metres high. It is falling in slowly but surely, but it still gives us a good idea of how much labour was involved in producing this platform. Now, what was the platform used for? Well, it had two purposes. The first being to hold the convicts on. By the time they got to here, started a mine here, they probably had 60 convicts going down into the tunnels each day, and that's two shifts of 60 convicts. And those convicts would have been marched up from the settlement. There's an old convict road, as I call it, up through there, and they would have come down here and then stood here waiting for their turn to be lowered into the shafts, and at the same time their comrades from the shift before were also being raised out of the shaft, so they needed a fair bit of area to sort all those convicts out in, and this large platform would have assisted for that. And the second reason it's here is on this platform they would have had some winding gear. The machines were called a windlass, and they're mainly a large wheel with 6 to 8 convicts on each side winding it, and that wheel allowed them to raise convicts as well as to raise the coal out of the shafts. Now, unsure how many of these apparatus they had. They may have had two up here. One of the shafts, it has a drawing of 3 windlasses being in location, but I don't think that was the case for all the shafts here. So they could have got away with one. They may have had a second one if they had trouble with flooding and used the second one to draw water out of the shafts and the tunnels below. There is one other platform like this at the coal mines, and it might be a good time just to pop up and have a look at that, which is situated right behind the 1839 shaft. We're back beside the 1839 shaft. It's quite a large shaft compared to some of the other convict built shafts down here, but again we do know this was built by convicts because we have a drawing of this location here which allows us to date when this shaft was operated. Now, where Gracie's patiently laying there is a large platform similar in shape and size to the one down at our chimney site. Main difference here is the banks behind are probably 3-4 times higher than that location there, and it's probably just a little bit narrower, but it's certainly consistent in shape and size as the one down there. Now, the platform was used by the civilians after they took over after the convicts left. They mounted their engine over at the engine mount behind me there, but this area here they also placed their winding gear to enable them like an A-frame or something like that had pulleys, ropes, cables on it to allow them to remove the coal from the shaft via the steam engine on the other side here. So there's two pits down here. That's the southern pit and this is the northern pit. It's a little bit bigger, this one, but I expect they both would have been the same size when they were built. This one here, the banks have not fallen in as much as on the southern side. One of these would have been a production shaft where they took out the coal, as well as lowering and raising the convicts to get the coal. And the other one would have been an air shaft that would have fed air down into the shafts. They would have had a small little furnace type thing at the bottom, and then the hot air would have rose, and then it would have sucked cooler air, fresh air back through the other shaft. Beside this northern shaft though, there's a massive sandstone block. It's got two large rods in it, slightly cracked there where they've got that one in, but that one there has no cracks at all. And see up here, the edge there, a little bit out of that side. Now I suspect that this here was a little bit further back, right on the edge of the shaft, and this was used by the private firms here in relation to the engine mount that's here. I'm unsure how the two were coupled together, but it seems to be reasonable to think that it was located with the engine mount. Now the engine mount itself was located here, but it's very hard to see what was going on back then. We had the large chimney here, which we'll get to in a minute. Let's go and have a look at some other engine mounts at the coal mines, which have a little bit more definition of this, and it'll give us a better idea of what we're looking at down here. Around 1840, the government decided to buy a steam engine for the coal mines. It was a 10 horsepower high pressure steam engine with attached boiler, and it was purchased from an Alexander Clark. The steam engine came out from Scotland, and the boiler you can see at the main shaft is still the original boiler from that steam engine. They had a bit of an issue though when they decided to build an engine mount down at the coal mines for that steam engine. They built the first mount in the wrong spot. Now they built it here in this area where there's two shafts. There's one shaft here and a slightly larger one here, but there's a lack of spoil or anything to a large degree around these shafts, so it doesn't look like they were dug to any depth. I can't see where the engine mount was originally. I can see broken bricks where Gracie is now. I can see some more down there and some sandstone over there, so I expect a lot of the bricks would have been robbed. I haven't researched this area yet, so there may be more of a platform in there behind Gracie. But at the end of the day, they had to pull apart this platform here and then go back up to the main shaft where it was originally supposed to be and build a new engine mount up there for the steam engine. And where Gracie's sitting now is approximately the middle of the location of where the engine was. So we're right behind the shaft here, and you can see the sandstone blocks in the distance there. This area here is approximately 6 metres by 6 metres, but I'm not too sure how far the structure itself for the engine went down in that area here. But regardless of that, it is a considerable area that would have been utilised for the engine. And on top of that, we have the boiler, as it was a steam engine, and that was originally located here on this sandstone platform. Now the boiler itself is 5 metres long, which means it went over the end of the platform here, but again it just shows you the size of the area that is required to mount those steam engines from the 1800s. Where Gracie is now is the middle of an engine mount that was located at the 1839 shaft, though it wasn't in operation when the 1839 shaft was started. This was built later on by civilians who leased the land from the government after the convicts left, so it wasn't convict built, but it gives us an idea of what an engine mount would have looked like. The original surveys or older surveys described this as a U-shaped, which I can kind of see Over the back there behind Gracie, there's a raised mound following my rope line, and then it comes up to here, and then it travels down to here roughly. As it's been robbed of bricks quite extensively, as per many of the locations at the coal mines, it's very hard to tell. The area that the brick rubble is located in, though, is a lot smaller than the 6 by 6 metres we saw up at the main shaft. It does seem here where the bank's been cut away a bit, so maybe it came down a little bit further than where my rope is, and maybe we're down to about here, so it's probably 5 metres by 4 metres. I don't know whether it was filled in the middle. This brick rubble may have been come from the sides. The sides may have been a lot higher, explaining why all the bricks here, but it does give us a bit of an idea of what an engine mount would have looked like when the private leases were taken out at the coal mines. So you can see from those engine mounts, which are in different states of repair, disrepair, what kind of size they were looking at. The bricks here come back a couple of metres back to behind where the chimney is, where I've got my rope. They come down to here. I've got a few loose ones over here and some more down this area here. But there's no definite shape like on the other ones. Where my rope line's travelling here, there is a bit of a ridge of dirt. That may be where they've just smoothed this out down here to allow the engine to be seated, but I can't see anything further than that to give me an idea of what was going on down here. There's a map from 1875 which gives us some clues on this area. It shows the engine mount being situated here at that time, and the platform it was on a rectangle shape that headed in that direction. But again, I can't see anything heading there that would give me an idea of where the actual shape of the mount was. Now, it's unknown whether they had a huge boiler down here like they did at the main shaft. The 1870 map shows the main shaft engine in position with pumping gear beside it in 1870, and it also shows an engine situated down here. It doesn't mention pumping gear, so I'm unsure as if it was the same type of engine they used up there that we used down here, or a completely different model as well. But looking at the size of those platforms for the engine, they seem to take up a fair bit more area than what's down here that I can see, unless the engine mount came down here a lot further, and there's a few bricks and sandstone over there, but whether there's more under this old rotten log, I don't know at this time. So let's have a look at our chimney around the outside. You can see the large block of sandstone here. These sandstone blocks go all the way around, and you've got 4 to 5 layers of bricks there. And then up here there's another section line of bricks going across there. These may be tapered in a bit. It seems to be only half a brick there. Maybe the brick's missing from the edge, I don't know. Travelling around, it's the same at the back. There are some gaps in the sandstone there, but there's bricks behind it. I thought that originally may be some type of exhaust vent, but it isn't. I've left everything alone here. The moss is the only thing that's holding it together. So, travelling round to the northern side, there's a bit more damage here. Some more bricks missing. There you can see the bricks in there, bright orange coloured, as opposed to some of these faded ones here on the outside. But all these bricks, I believe, would have come from the settlement. they would have recycled it and brought them up here. These bricks here, which are lighter in colour, I believe come from Port Arthur, and the darker coloured bricks, you can see them there, may have come from the kiln, the brick kiln that was located here. So we're round to the front, and we've got an opening there. A couple of relics that I found right beside it. Now these here are used to join the timber tracks that they had here. They never had metal railroad tracks. The tramways are all constructed out of timber, and those pieces of metal were used to join them. And here, some type of, I believe, piece of tin. Unsure what that's got to do with everything that was happening up here. And then we have here a entranceway where the bricks seems to be tapered off. Let's go and have a look inside and see if we can find anything. Got a few old bones in there. Thankfully no tiger snakes. You can see it's closed off at the far end. There's a bit of metal here. But it seems to narrow here. The bricks on both sides, apart from that one there that's fallen down, the bricks seem to be wider there than it is the entrance, so for whatever reason they had a small channel here and a bigger chamber in there. Let's have a look and see what the ceiling looks like. I'm right at the back of the chamber now, and I'm coming back towards the entrance hole, and you can see up there it's solid apart from a bit of a gap there where a brick's missing. And then we come to here and you can see a large piece of metal going across supporting the side, and it looks like there's some old bones or something up there, not sure, so maybe they come in from the top. There was an opening there, and since then it's been filled full of dust, dirt, for whatever reason, but maybe some animal or something had died up the top there. About 20 metres north of the Chimley engine mount is another structure. It's surrounded by brick rubble, and there's 3 pieces of sandstone, a large dress block there, a bit of an off-cut there, and another bit of a off-cut over there. Now this structure in the middle, it's about 1.3 by 1 metre in size, and it seems to me that this was some type of fireplace chimney. I don't know if it had anything to do with the machinery that was down here, or it may have been some type of fireplace for the miners working here, and they had a wooden hut surrounding it to keep them dry. I can see by looking at this stuff, and I think it's called crinkle, but you can tell that this here was produced in very high temperatures, so it does lead me to believe that this was used as an actual fireplace, where I wasn't seeing any of that type of material over at the other chimney, which kind of leads me to believe that one there had something to do with more of ventilating the engine itself. So once the coal was taken out of the shaft, raised up by either the convicts or by the engine later on, I believe it was taken to this side here, and I'm right between the shafts there. And it was taken down to here where there's a bulkhead, or the remains of a bulkhead. We're on the bottom side of what's left of this bulkhead. The bulkhead's just a cutting in the earth where they allowed the coal to be screened. They wanted larger pieces, like around 20 centimetres, not the tiny stuff. So they had a wooden screen up above this bulkhead, and normally that screened the coal. The bigger stuff would retain on to the screen, and the smaller stuff would fall through. And then after that, the screen would be tipped into a large coal cart, which is probably holding about a tonne. and from there the coal would be pushed down to Plunket Point. Now the convicts would have used this tramway here, what's called the 1838-39 tramway, and that went in an almost direct line from here down to Plunket Point. That was closed up, the tracks removed, and was no longer used once the convicts had finished mining up in this area, and there's more shafts up here than just the two we're looking at. But this tramway was closed down by about 1840 when they started mining further up north. So the civilians, when they took over here the lease, they had to make another tramway that goes through all that bracken there, and that would go down and link up with the inclined plane. That's the tramway that comes down from the main shaft that goes to Plunket Point. So they had to go the long way round to get their coal down to Plunket Point. Now, a question that needs to be answered was when did all the action take place down here date-wise? It's very hard to date just about most of the structures down here. With the buildings there are plans, maps, and there is correspondence which is used by historians. In regards to the mine shafts, it's a little bit more of a difficult situation. There is no register of convict mine shafts, of when they were started, when they were completed, how deep they went, when they stopped working them. Some of the records there in the correspondence tell us when those shafts were started and when one was finished, but they also contradict themselves, and then a second or even a third shaft appears in the manuscripts which wasn't mentioned before. And historians try to make a very educated guess as to what was built when, but there's a very amount of grey areas in some of those determinations that I've found. This pair of shafts, I believe, was dug around 1837. There's a map of this area here around 1842 which shows it in existence, as well as some more shafts that are heading up in that direction. About 30 metres north of our position at the moment there's another shaft, and then about 30 metres odd there's another pair of shafts, and then another pair after that. So they use these shafts here to work this section of the seam before heading up to where the shaft is that we showed with the engine mount, the U-shaped engine mount. They worked there and then they headed up to the main shaft after that. So another reason I believe this was convict built originally is because of the size of the platform. There's only two platforms here of this size. This one here and the other one is up where the U-shaped engine mount was, but we know behind that where the actual shaft was, the platform I showed you before, that was convict built as well. So that leads me to believe that this here was originally a convict built shaft, and then later on the private firm come down here after the convicts left in 1848. Now it shows on the 1870 map a plan of this area here with the engine in position, and it also shows the one up at the main shaft. So there would have been two separate engines. Whether they're the same type of engine, I don't know. I suspect that maybe this engine was used prior to being located here up where the other platform is, behind the U-shaped engine mount, so it would have been mounted on that U-shaped engine mount, but I have no documentation to say yay or nay on that little idea. The more I look at this area, the more I'm confused about it. It just doesn't seem to have enough room compared to the other engine mounts. I got in the back of my mind, I suspect that these bricks here may have just been from the chimney itself, as it would have been fairly high if it was used as some type of exhaust chimney for the engine, so the fumes weren't sucked back down into the shaft where they were working. And just possibility is these bricks were solely to give that height, and the engine itself may have been mounted on logs or something like that, which explains why there is no real definite shape over there of bricks compared to the other engine mounts that we've seen. So there you have it, the 1837 shafts, the surrounding platform, the brick chimney and engine mount at the coal mines.